Alright, so setting up IK handles, I ripped off part of the basic spine, and I've just set up like a crappy controller for the chest, and 2 for the arms. I've ignored the clavicles and everything else because shrugs. So basically what IK should do is if you move the end of the arm like this, it's going to take the rest of the arm with it, and that's just going to stay planted no matter where you put it, even if you're, moving this around. At some point it'll sort of rip things off of the joint, and that's fine. But that's what IK is supposed to do. It's great for like putting hands or legs on a table. If you're doing like a walk or a walk cycle, usually you would want to use IK, at least for the legs. I try to avoid them for the arms where possible because I feel like the motion is more natural with FK. But again, great for planting your hand on a table. You don't need to counter key all the time. So the functionality that we actually want, you'll notice I've set up IK handles on actually both of the arms, and this is basically, they're behaving differently, which is not something I have ever seen before. It's actually driving me nuts, so I'm going to delete that handle. But what we want is this on the left. So I'll show you just how to set up an IK handle really quick. It's actually very straightforward. Just go to Skeleton, create IK handle. You want to make sure that you have rotation plane solver checked. Pretty much just reset everything to the basics if you're worried. And then select from the shoulder and shift click down to the wrist. Usually for IK, again, it depends what you want, but usually you're going to click from the sort of center or core of the body outward. So for the legs, you would do like hips down to feet. So it's popped up this little IK handle here in the outliner. If we move that IK handle around, it's going to bend the arm the same way as we do the other one. I'm going to just very quickly take this crappy controller I made and constrain it. IK handles, you actually only need a point constraint. It doesn't really do anything for rotation, so I'm just going to do point constraint. So now I can move this around, we have an arm. If we then move the rest of the body, again, this one's working, this one is not. Like, this IK handle should be attached to this controller. This is a new thing that started in my Maya as of literally yesterday, and for some reason it is affecting all my files, even ones that worked before. I don't know why that is. It might not be an issue on yours. If it is, this is the fix that I have found so far. Select your IK handle, go into your attribute editor, and go under IK handle attributes. Take stickiness and make it sticky. I don't know what stickiness is, but it fixed it. You can see that as soon as I clicked it, it snapped the handle back to the arm, and as we move this around, it's now behaving like we want for an IK arm. Don't worry about this separation. Again, that's sort of part of how IK handles work. But that's honestly the basics of how you set up an IK handle. It is fairly straightforward. I will show you, I'm just going to make a separate little video for it. I'll show you like a nice setup for it. There is some settings called twist, which is helpful to access. So if you click on the IK handle, come into your channel box, or you can find it in the attribute editor, just grab twist. You can sort of wiggle that up and down. This is the basically controlling the rotation of the arm. And actually, you know what, I think I'm just gonna, I'll just do it now. What the heck. Okay. So, there's 2 ways to control the bend of an arm if you are using an IK setup. One is to control that twist attribute, but you don't want to go into your outliner and click on your IK handle to find it every time. That's going to be really annoying. So what we're going to do is just create a custom attribute. So I'll do a bunch of these more later, but select your little wrist controller, wherever you want to put this, it honestly doesn't matter. Go to your channel box, do edit, add attribute, and I'm just going to call this twist. You do want it keyable. I'm going to make sure that this is set to float. This is basically a number that gives you decibels. Integer is just going to be like 1, 2, 3. With a float you could do, 2.475 if you wanted to. Boolean is just 1 or 0. It's yes, no. And then all of these, pretty much don't worry about them for now. I'm going to leave this with no minimum and maximum because I want to be able to make sure I can enter whatever number I want and not be only constrained to certain degrees, and I'll just hit add. So at this point we have the little twist attribute. You can see that's just like hanging out there, but it doesn't really do anything. So we need to actually hook this up to our IK handle. To do that, just go into your connection editor. So Windows, General Editors, and connection editor. They put connection and component editor right next to each other, and I get them confused all the time. You want the connection editor. So at this point, the NURB circle or the control is usually going to be on the left, so like have wherever the attribute is that you want to affect the other thing, that should be on the left, but you can also just sort of switch things around up here if you want. So select your IK handle and just do reload right, it'll pop it in there, and just scroll down until you find the twist attributes. I find it's actually usually just scroll all the way down, you have twist here, just click it, it'll gray out anything that you can't connect to it, and then just click on twist up here. And if they're both sort of blue, you should be able to modify them. So if I click on my controller here, and I modify this twist value, you can see that it's actually controlling the arm now. Excuse me. So that's actually pretty much done. Fairly straightforward process. One weird thing you will notice about IK handles is if you move this, the hand is moving, and there's no way to actually control that. So to prevent that hand from moving and actually be able to control it at all, really quick and easy fix, just grab your controller, grab the wrist joint, and you just want to do an orient constraint on those. So the controller is controlling the position of the IK handle with a point constraint, and the rotation of this wrist joint, which isn't really being affected by the IK handle, it's controlling that with an orient constraint. So now, if we move this around, you can see the arm or the hand is sort of staying where it is, and we are able to actually rotate that like a real person. It's very exciting. So I'll just really quick do that to the other hand. And this one I'm going to use a slightly different method for controlling it. So I'm just going to make a little locator. Again, these don't really render, they're just sort of there. So I'll make a locator and I'll sort of pop it back behind the arm, make it a little bit larger, and I will just freeze these, don't freeze transformations on a locator, I forgot that was the thing. I honestly don't use locators that much, they kind of, okay, yeah, locators are crazy. They behave a little bit strange when you zero them out, but for demonstration purposes, they work fine. You could use a new NURBS curve if you wanted, you could use a piece of geometry, doesn't really matter. Basically, you're just going to set up a pole vector constraint for this. So a pole vector, and of course I, for some reason, can't, okay, so you can kind of, sort of see it here. So this is my IK handle, and right at the top, or like close to the root of the body at the shoulder, it has this weird little white thing on it. That is pointing in the direction of the pole vector, and I'm terrible at describing what that is. But basically, if you bend your IK handle, it's going to bend along basically the direction that this little white thing is pointing. So this is actually in the beginning why I said it's important to have a slightly bent joint, because you'll notice like when I bend this, it's bending in the way you would expect an elbow to bend and not flipping off in crazy directions. If you had a straight joint chain, there's not a really great way to control which way this thing is bending. So again, that's why I said to have to bend the arms. Doesn't matter at all for an FK setup. For IK, it does make your life way easier. But either way, so just grab your little locator or whatever thing you're trying to basically point to. Think of it as like pointing with the elbow, if that makes sense. So like the elbow is just kind of always point towards this thing. And then grab your IK handle, go to constrain, and no real options to here, so just hit apply. It's going to draw a little line between this locator, and you can see that now as I move this arm, perhaps this is not like a very obvious way to demonstrate this, but basically wherever I move this little locator, it's going to always sort of point with the elbow in this direction. So this is how you would end up sort of controlling things. You can actually set up fancy switches where you have both, you can control it with both twist and the pole vector. Usually I just use twist because I'm lazy, but I'm actually kind of looking at things and I'm like, maybe I'll start playing a little bit more with pole vectors, because I've been having some I've been having to do for some freelance stuff some like really crazy translations for a guy with the arms, and it's been like really not liking what I've been having to do for that, so I might play with that. One thing I will recommend if you are going to use a pole vector constraint, again, twist and pole vector, pretty much they do exactly the same thing, just two different ways to do it. I would actually recommend not using a locator, just so that you can actually zero out that control. The other thing you could theoretically do is like put the locator in a null group and move the group itself into position. so that you are then able to, theoretically, zero out the controls on this group and have the locator also at 0, 0, 0. So if you are going to use a locator, I would recommend doing it that way. Okay, scale still just is tiny, but yeah. So that's honestly basically all there is to setting up an IK handle. So I'll go over this on the actual skeleton if you guys care. In the next video, I'll show you guys maybe one or two other sort of weird little things with that.